Hey everybody, welcome back to the Jays for Thousand podcast. Today we're going to be talking about the Las Vegas Raiders. This team, where will they be in 2026 and beyond? They finished 3-14 last year with the worst offense in the NFL, arguably only averaging 13 points per game. Geno Smith, the starting quarterback, 19 touchdowns, 17 interceptions. Ashton Genty only finished with 266 attempts, 975 yards, five touchdowns. The Raiders finished 32nd in the entire NFL, so they were the last in the league ranked for running the football. This team just wasn't very good last year, but they got the first overall pick in Fernando Mendoza, quarterback out of Indiana, who won a national championship this past year. They made a lot of good free agency signings. So I don't know, will this team be can they move from a bottom of the barrel team to a mid level team? Possibly, they can. I think they can. I think bringing in Klint Kubiak, who was the former offensive coordinator for the Seahawks, who just won the Super Bowl, was a great move. Bringing him in as head coach, and then he brings in his guys to run the offense. Bringing in Andrew Janoko, who was a quarterbacks coach for the Seattle Seahawks last year. Now he's offensive coordinator for the Raiders. Rob Leonard, who was a defensive line coach previously for the Raiders, he's now the defensive coordinator. So, first off, the Raiders last year, yeah, offensively just wasn't very good. They only won three games. First game of the year was against the New England Patriots that they did win. And they looked pretty good, but overall throughout the year, just was not able to get much going on offense. Offensive line wasn't doing very well. Um, they just did not have a consistent offense to put out on the field each and every game. You watch that team. When you're not able to run the football, you're not going to be able to pass the football either. Teams knew that when the Raiders lined up against them. They knew that the Raiders could not run the football at all, so that gave them the advantage to guard against the pass, and then they weren't able to do it. Um, like I said, Geno Smith finished with the highest interception number this year for any quarterback, and he's now with the Jets. Raiders, of course, bringing in Fernando Mendoza, who is expected to be a really, he's not expected to be a superstar quarterback in the NFL, but the Raiders don't need him to be. He's got that kind of Tom Brady like type of like mentality to him. He's a guy who's going to come in, he's going to work hard, he's going to stay in the film room. That's what he's. There's been nothing but good reports of him throughout training camp. He's a guy that's the type of offense that the Seahawks run, which is mainly a wide zone, outside zone, play action type of offense that Clint Kubiak ran in New Orleans. He ran in Seattle, which is why Seattle was so successful offensively. They were one of the top teams in the NFL offensively, as they were able to run the football so well and then build the play action pass off of that run game. And so I think moving forward for this team, this is going to be key if they can just get the offense to where it needs to be. You got guys like Jalen Naylor, who they brought in free agency from the Vikings. He was a solid pickup for them. Signed him for a 3-year deal. And then you got Jacoby Myers still at receiver. Brock Bowers at tight end, he had a great season last year. He's a superstar tight end. I think the Raiders offensively just have to be better, but defensively they were okay. They were top the 14 defense. Then they brought in N'Kobe Dean on a 3-year deal. Also brought in Quay Walker, former Georgia linebacker, $40.5 million on a 3-year deal, and Kwity Paye on a 3-year, $48 million deal. I think Kwity Paye was a bit of an overpay. He had like only six sacks last year. He didn't play up to his ceiling. He's a solid player, but he hasn't really lived up to the expectation that he was supposed to have when he came out of the draft, when he got drafted by the Colts a few years ago. But they signed him to help out Max Crosby, who was supposed to be traded to the Ravens. He never did get traded there. And last year, the defense was decent, but outside of Max Crosby, they didn't really have anybody make any plays. Eric Stokes was a solid player for them last year, and they brought him back on a 3-year, $30 million deal. I think the Raiders, if they can get both sides of the football figured out, they'll be a decent team. I think they just have been missing a quarterback for a long time, and then a guy like Fernando Mendoza, I think he's what you need in this type of offense. You know, offense that's fairly it's simple in the sense that you're not asking your quarterback to just throw all over the field. It's really just outside zone play action. Maybe have your throws digs across the middle of the field. Your crossing routes, nothing crazy. You're not throwing the ball deep every play. You know, short to intermediate level routes. I think that's what Fernando Mendoza is really good at. That's what he was good at when he was in Indiana. And I don't think Clint Kubiak's going to ask much of him to do his rookie year if he plays, which I'm sure he will play, but that's depending on when he will play. They signed Kirk Cousins in free agency as well to be the backup, so I'm assuming Kirk Cousins is going to start, and then depending on who wins the battle in camp, it's going to be between, of course, Fernando and Kirk. But something tells me that we'll see Fernando Mendoza at some point in the 2026 season. He's going to be he's obviously going to be the face of the franchise for years to come as he got selected with the first overall pick. So I expect to see him very early next year. Now, some people talk about should rookie quarterbacks play in their first year? Should they start in their first season? I did talk about this on another video on my podcast. You can check that out. But I think Fernando Mendoza should start. I think the Raiders are not in a position to compete next year. I don't think they're going to be a contending team next year just because they have so many different pieces that they have to orchestrate and work together. You have a new head coach. You're going to have a new offensive coordinator. You're going to have new players on your defense. Like it's going to be a lot for them to get together in their first year. I don't expect them to be, like I don't expect them to be a very high ranked team, like a playoff team, but I expect them to be at least, 7 to 8 wins. I think it's manageable for them, given the upgrades they made for the team. So I'm interested to see what the Raiders can do. I think they're moving in the right direction. This is a franchise that has been they've been in a black hole for a long time. And now they have a chance to rewrite that. There's just been a lot of drama, a lot of bad things around the team. Now you have a fresh face at head coach. You have a fresh face at quarterback. Your best player, Max Crosby, he's there for right now at least. Can you convince him to stay? Can you make enough changes to keep him around? Or is he going to get traded again? We don't know. Maybe. Well, I mean, yeah, I think the Raiders are going to be a decent team next year. Like, people call me crazy, but I think the Raiders have they this is a team that clearly saw the problems on their roster and they went out and they fixed it. Mark Davis, who is the owner of the team, he's like, okay, we need a quarterback, we need offensive linemen, we need some edge rushers on the defense. We need guys in the linebacker room that are going to be able to go out there and move sideline to sideline and compete and cover the pass as well. You get guys like Quay Walker, you get guys like N'Kobe Dean to go and do that. And that's what they did. Of course, Tom Brady he's a part owner of the team. So, that's another good thing to have in your back pocket if you're the Raiders fan base. But I see this team with 7 to 8 wins next year. I think maybe after that, maybe 9 to 10, 11 to 12 wins, if they can get everything right. But I don't think they're going to be flying out of the gate next year. But I expect Fernando Mendoza to be a really great player for them. He's got the leadership qualities. He's a hard worker. He's quiet. He's a guy that's going to work hard. I mean, I think he's been the film room all through the off season. He hasn't been. He doesn't. He said he hasn't even really gone anywhere else but to practice in the film room. So that's a guy you want at quarterback. And yeah, I'm excited to see what happens. You guys, let me know what you think. Do you think the Raiders can be a decent team next year, maybe mid-level team, 8 to 9 wins, or do you think they're going to be back in the barrel, of only winning 3 games, losing 14 games? Let me know what you think in the comment section below. We'll see you next time on Jay's Fifth.